"Drink up. It'll help with your nerves," my stepfather Craig urged, his gaze fixed on me as he passed me the travel mug. The coffee had an unpleasant, bitter scent, with a metallic hint that made my stomach churn. I'm Andrew Bishop, 26 still. Living with my mom and Craig in Missoula, Montana, definitely not the best situation, but I had been saving money post-graduation, creating a portfolio, and finally secured an interview for a marketing coordinator role at Granite Peak Outfitters, the outdoor gear company I had dreamed of joining since my freshman year. Adjusting my tie, I felt Craig's eyes on me. "Thanks, I'll take it to go," I replied, trying to sound relaxed. The mug felt heavier than it should have. Craig leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "Big day. Wouldn't want anything to stand in your way." His words were encouraging, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. That was Craig Henson in a nutshell, a contractor turned self-proclaimed realist who married my mom 4 years ago and never missed a chance to voice his. Low opinion of my career choice. Online. 4 years studying advertising just to make brochures, he would say. Or, back in my day, we worked with our hands, not hashtags. I nodded, grabbed my portfolio, and headed for the door. My mom had already left for her nursing shift, leaving just me and Craig in the house with that suspicious mug of coffee. At the gas station 2 blocks away, I popped the lid and poured the coffee into the trash. The liquid appeared darker than it should have, with an oily sheen on top. My hands trembled slightly as I replaced the lid. This wasn't the first time. I had felt that unsettling sensation around Craig. 2 weeks earlier, I discovered an unmarked bottle in his truck while searching for jumper cables. The label was worn, but I recognized the shape. Sleep aids, the strong kind. I had put it back, exactly as I found it, and said nothing. Now, while waiting at a red light, I checked my watch. Still plenty of time to grab real coffee before the interview. I couldn't prove anything about Craig, but my gut told me he didn't want me to get this job, didn't want me to succeed and move out. I had long suspected he saw me as competition for my mom's attention. What I hadn't realized until now was how far he might go to keep me under his control. I hadn't always been this suspicious. Growing up, it was just my mom and me in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of town. She worked double shifts at St. Patrick Hospital to support us after my father left when I was 3. I barely remembered him, just a voice and the smell of pine aftershave. Mom met Craig at the hospital where she worked. He was renovating the East Wing and came home one day talking about a nice contractor who had asked her out for coffee. I was happy for her. 22 years alone was enough sacrifice for anyone. The first year was fine. Craig fixed things around our apartment, took Mom on proper dates, and even helped me move into my college dorm. "Good to see a young man getting educated," he'd said, though he added, "Just remember, there's no shame in learning a trade if this doesn't work out." The tension started when I moved back home after graduation. The economy was tough, and entry-level marketing jobs were hard to come by in Missoula. What I planned as a 3-month stay turned into 14 months. Craig's comments grew sharper when I'd land a freelance gig. He'd ask how much it paid and smirk when I told him. When I stayed up late working on my portfolio, he'd walk by and mutter, "Playing with your little pictures again?" My mom noticed the tension but tried to smooth things over. "He just wants you to be secure," she'd say. His father was tough on him about finding steady work. Then the strange things started happening. My alarm wouldn't go off before important meetings. My portfolio files would mysteriously shift on my laptop, and the Wi-Fi would cut out during video interviews. "Technology, huh?" Craig would say, shaking his head. Unreliable. Last month, I finally got a call from Granite Peak Outfitters. They had seen my redesigned mock-up of their summer catalog posted online and wanted me to interview for the marketing coordinator position. When I told Mom, she hugged me tightly. "I always knew you'd find your way," she whispered. Craig was washing dishes, his back to us. All he said was, "Don't count your chickens." That night, I heard them arguing through the wall. Mom's voice rose. "Why can't you just be happy for him?" Craig's response was lower but clear enough. "This isn't a real career opportunity. He needs to face reality." I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, realizing Craig would never see me as anything but a disappointment. Worse yet, he might actively be working to keep me that way. The morning of my interview, I was up before sunrise. I had pressed my only suit the night before, polished my shoes, and triple-checked my portfolio. This wasn't just any opportunity. Granite Peak made the camping gear I had grown up using, the brand that had fueled my passion for marketing in the first place. I walked into the kitchen at 6:30, and there was Craig, already dressed for work in his contractor's clothes, making coffee. "Big day?" he said, not looking up from the counter. "Figured you could use some fuel." Something in his tone made the hair on my neck stand up. Craig never made coffee for me. Never. "That's thoughtful," I said, watching, as he poured the dark liquid into my travel mug, the one I had bought myself with my first freelance check. "Special blend," he added, turning to hand it to me. "Should help with the nerves." Our eyes locked as I took the mug, and I noticed something I had never caught before, a flicker of satisfaction, maybe even triumph. His gaze dropped to the mug and then back to my face, waiting. I brought the mug close, pretending to blow on it. The smell hit me, bitter, chemical, with that same metallic edge I had detected on his breath some mornings when he'd overslept, like the unmarked pills I had found in his truck. My mind flashed to all the accidents over the past year, the missed alarms, the lost files, the sudden stomach bug I had developed before a promising phone interview. In that moment, everything crystallized. This wasn't just passive disapproval. Craig was actively sabotaging me. I smiled and said, "Thanks, I'll take it to go." As I walked to my car, mug in hand, a strange calm settled over me. No anger, no panic, just clarity. I drove to the gas station 2 blocks away and dumped the coffee into the trash, watching the oily liquid soak into the crumpled napkins and fast food wrappers. 30 minutes later, I sat in the Granite Peak lobby, sipping a plain black coffee I'd bought from the cafe across the street. My portfolio was open on my lap, but I wasn't reviewing it. Instead, I was mentally cataloging every incident over the past year, seeing them as connected dots rather than random bad luck. When the interviewer called my name, I stood up, feeling more determined than I had in months. This wasn't just about a job anymore. It was about proving something to myself, to Craig, to the universe. The interview itself passed in a focused blur. I spoke clearly about my ideas for their spring campaign, showed them mock-ups I'd created, and answered their questions with a confidence that surprised even me. "Where do you see yourself in 5 years, Andrew?" the marketing director asked. "Toward the end." "Building something lasting," I said, "creating campaigns that connect people to products that matter in their lives." As I drove home 3 hours later with a job offer and a start date, I thought about the coffee again, about Craig watching me, waiting for me to drink it. I wasn't angry. I was resolved. This game between us was over, and only one of us knew it. I walked through the front door that evening, still riding the high of getting the job offer. The starting salary was decent, benefits after 90 days, and most importantly, a chance to prove myself at a company I respected. I was already mentally packing my bags, calculating how quickly I could afford my own place. The sound of retching stopped me cold. Craig was slumped on the living room couch, a plastic bucket between his knees, his face pale, sweat beading on his forehead. The empty coffee mug, my mug, sat on the end table beside him. He looked up, eyes narrowing when he saw me. "You're back," he mumbled, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "Got the job," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Start Monday." Something flashed across his face, surprise, then something darker. He nodded and bent over the bucket again. My mom came in from the kitchen, concern etched on her face. "Andrew, you're home. How did it go?" "They offered me the position on the spot," I said, unable to hide the pride in my voice. She hugged me tightly. "That's wonderful. I knew you could do it." Over her shoulder, I watched Craig. He wasn't looking at us, just staring at the floor. "What happened to him?" I asked, pulling away from Mom. "Food poisoning, maybe," she said, lowering her voice. "He's been sick all day and won't say much about it." "All day?" I echoed. "Since when?" "Since morning right after you left." She said he felt fine. Then suddenly he was running for the bathroom. It had been that way for hours. I nodded slowly, the pieces clicking into place. Craig must have helped himself to the special pot of coffee after I'd gone, the coffee he had prepared for me that morning. After Mom had gone to bed and Craig had finally stopped throwing up long enough to sleep, I sat at my desk and opened the small drawer where I kept the unmarked bottle I had found in his truck weeks earlier. I had taken it when I found it, replacing it with an identical empty one, insurance, even though I hadn't known what for at the time. The label had worn off, but the small white pills inside matched the powdery residue I had seen at the bottom of the mug, crushed sleep aids mixed with something else strong enough to make someone miss an important interview, maybe even strong, enough to make them seem impaired or intoxicated. The next morning, Craig avoided eye contact at breakfast. He looked better, but still moved gingerly, as if his stomach was tender. "Feeling better?" I asked, pouring myself a bowl of cereal. "Fine," he grunted, not looking up from his phone. "Good," I replied. "I've got some apartment listings to check out today. Need to find my own place before I start the new job." His head snapped up. "Already? You just got the offer yesterday." "No sense wasting time," I said. "I've saved enough for the deposit and first month's rent. Should be out of your hair by next weekend." "Your mother will miss having you around," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "I'll only be across town," I countered. "We can do Sunday dinners." Craig's jaw tightened. "You know entry-level jobs are risky. Companies hire young people, work them to death, then let them go before benefits kick in. Might be smarter to stay here and save up more of a cushion." And there it was, the trap he'd spent months laying, undermining me, even trying to drug me, and now he wanted me to stay under his roof where he could control me. "Thanks for the concern," I replied, "but I think it's time." That afternoon I found an affordable studio apartment 10 minutes from Granite Peak's offices. The landlord liked that I had a job lined up and approved my application on the spot. I signed the lease right there, putting down the deposit I'd been saving for nearly a year. When I got home, Craig was in the garage working on his truck. I walked in, set a folded note inside his open toolbox, and left without a word. The note read, "Whatever you were hoping to ruin didn't work." 3 days later, I was packing boxes in my room when Mom knocked on the doorframe, her face drawn, eyes red-rimmed. "Can we talk?" she asked, sitting on the edge of my bed. I nodded, setting down the books I had been stacking. "Craig told me something this morning," she began, her voice unnaturally steady. "He said you've been hostile toward him, that you left a threatening note in his toolbox." I sat beside her. "Did he tell you what was in his coffee the day of my interview?" Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "The coffee he made specifically for me that morning, the one he got sick from after drinking it himself." Mom's hands twisted in her lap. "He said it was food poisoning. He didn't go to any diner that morning, Mom. He was here making special coffee for me." I crossed to my desk and took out the unmarked pill bottle, setting it in her palm. "I found this in his truck weeks ago. The same stuff was crushed into that coffee." She stared at the bottle, then at me. "That's a serious accusation, Andrew. Which is why I've kept quiet. I can't prove it was intentional." "Then why?" "Because it's not the first time," I interrupted. "My alarm clock being reset before interviews, files disappearing from my laptop, the Wi-Fi mysteriously failing during video calls with potential employers." Mom's face paled. "He wouldn't," but her voice lacked conviction. "I thought it was just disapproval at first," I continued, "but it's more than that." Mom stood abruptly, pacing the small room. "This doesn't make sense. Craig has always wanted what's best for us. For you, maybe," I said quietly. "But I'm competition." "Competition for what?" she asked. "For your attention, your respect, your money." "Even my money?" she echoed. I hadn't wanted to have this conversation, but now that we'd started, I couldn't stop. "Have you checked your savings account lately or your retirement fund?" Her face told me everything I'd suspected for months, that Craig was siphoning money little by little. The new tools he didn't need, the fishing trips with buddies, the cash he always seemed to have despite working fewer hours. When was the last time you actually saw a bank statement, Mom? She sank back onto the bed. "Craig handles the bills. He says it stresses me out too much." Her voice was barely audible. "How did you know?" "I saw a notice from the bank in the mail last month. Your account was overdrawn, but I know how careful you are with money. It didn't make sense." Silence stretched between us. Finally, Mom looked up, her eyes clearer now, determined. "Show me everything," she said. Over the next hour, I laid it all out, the patterns of sabotage, the missing money, the way Craig isolated her from her friends, always with reasonable-sounding excuses, how he had been steering me toward dead end. Opportunities while actively undermining the promising ones. "I thought he was protective," she whispered. "I thought he cared about us." "He cares about control," I replied, "and he's been losing it little by little, ever since I moved back home." Mom stood up again, shoulders straightening. "I need to make some calls. To the bank? To a lawyer, maybe?" I nodded, relief washing through me. I'd been prepared to leave her behind to escape Craig's manipulation while knowing she remained in its grip. Now, at least her eyes were open. "What about your apartment?" she asked. "When do you move in?" "Saturday," I said. "But I don't have to." "Yes, you do," she cut in, her voice stronger than I'd heard in years. "You need to start your life, Andrew. I'll handle mine." As she left my room, I realized something had fundamentally shifted between us. For years, I'd been the one who needed protection. Now we were standing on equal ground, allies against a common threat. The next few days passed in a strange, tense silence. Craig seemed to sense something had changed but couldn't pinpoint what. He watched Mom and me carefully, his usual commentary replaced with wary observation. I continued packing, making arrangements for the move. Mom spent hours on the phone in hushed conversations, often going into the backyard where Craig couldn't overhear. Twice she drove to the bank alone, returning with a determined set to her jaw. On Thursday night, 2 days before my move, Mom found me in the kitchen making a sandwich. "I've opened a new account," she whispered, glancing toward the living room where Craig was watching television. "Transferred what was left of my savings." "It wasn't much," I said. "How much is missing?" "Almost $20,000 over the past 3 years," she said, her voice tight. "Small withdrawals just under the notification threshold." He forged my signature on some of the forms. I felt sick. That was her retirement money, her security. "The bank is investigating," she continued. "I've frozen all the accounts he had access to." "What about the house payment, the utilities?" "Taken care of," she said. "From my new account?" I nodded, impressed by her swift action. "What's your plan?" "I'm meeting with a lawyer on Monday," she said. "After you're gone, after you're safe." The protectiveness in her voice caught me off guard. "I can stay, Mom. Help you through this." She shook her head firmly. "No. You need to start your job, start your life. I've let him hold us both back for too long." The next evening, my last night in the house, Craig finally confronted me. I was loading boxes into my car when he stepped into the garage, beer in hand. "So you're really doing this?" he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Running off to play with the outdoor crowd?" I closed the trunk. "It's a good opportunity." "Your mother's upset, you know, thinks you're abandoning her." The manipulation was so transparent now that I could spot it a mile away. "Actually, she's proud of me," I said. Craig's eyes narrowed. "You've been different this week, both of you, whispering, making calls." I shrugged. "Just busy with the move." He took a step closer. "I saw the note you left in my toolbox. Think you're clever, don't you?" "Just observant," I replied, meeting his gaze. "You know jobs fall through all the time," he said, his voice dropping, "especially for people who aren't reliable, who miss days, who show up impaired." The threat hung in the air between us. I felt a flicker of the old fear, but pushed it away. That would be unfortunate, I agreed, almost as unfortunate as a bank investigation into forged withdrawal slips. I watched the color drain from his face as the implication sank in. Or a doctor questioning what kind of stomach bug matches the symptoms of pharmaceutical sleep aids mixed with alcohol. Craig's expression hardened. You don't know what you're talking about. Maybe not, I said. But Mom's lawyer might. I walked past him into the house, my heart pounding, but my steps steady. I had said too much, shown my hand, but it felt right. Craig needed to know that his actions had consequences, that people were watching now. That night I heard them arguing. In their bedroom, voices rising and falling. I didn't try to listen. Whatever happened next between them was their battle, not mine. In the morning, I finished loading my car early. Mom came out to the driveway to hug me goodbye, pressing a small envelope into my hand. A housewarming gift, she said. Don't open it until you get there. Craig watched from the window but didn't come out. He just stayed in his chair, eyes hard, pretending nothing had happened. As I drove away, I felt lighter than I had in years, not because I was leaving home, but because, for the first time, in a long time, it felt like Mom and I were both heading toward something better, rather than just surviving where we were. 3 weeks into my new job at Granite Peak, I was settling into a routine. My studio apartment was small but mine, and the marketing team appreciated my ideas. For the first time in years, I felt like I was building something. Mom and I talked every few days. She had filed for divorce the Monday after I left, the same day she met with the lawyer. Craig hadn't taken it well, alternating between rage and desperate promises to change. He keeps saying it was all a misunderstanding, she told me during one call, claims he was borrowing the money, planning to pay it back. I said nothing. We both knew better. On a crisp Thursday evening, I was heading back to my apartment after work when my phone rang. It was Mom, her voice steadier than I'd heard in years. It's done, she said. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. What happened? The bank investigation came through. Forgery on 11 withdrawal slips. Plus, they found prescription drugs in the house that weren't prescribed to either of us. I pulled over, letting the news sink in. Is Craig gone? They arrested him an hour ago. I'm at Aunt June's house now, going to stay with her for a while. After hanging up, I sat in my car, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. I thought about the coffee that morning, how close I'd come to drinking it, how easily things could have gone another way. I didn't feel satisfaction exactly, just quiet relief that a chapter had closed. That evening, a text came. Through, from Mom's phone, a photo of her and Aunt June sitting on the porch of the old farmhouse where Mom had grown up, both women smiling. The message read, "Starting over. Thank you for showing me how." I set my phone down and looked around my small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was honest, clean, mine. Sometimes the best revenge isn't striking back. It's simply walking away and building something better. 6 months later, I stood in the conference room at Granite Peak, presenting my campaign for their winter collection. The executives nodded as I walked them through the concept, authentic stories from real customers, highlighting moments where the gear had made a difference in their outdoor experiences. This connects with our core values perfectly, the marketing director said when I finished. We'd like you to lead the project. As I packed up my materials, my phone buzzed with a message from Mom, a photo attached. She was standing in front of a small brick building, holding up a set of keys. Signed the lease today. Coffee shop opens next month. After the divorce settlement and the recovery of most of her savings, she had decided to pursue the dream she'd put on hold for 20 years, opening a small cafe. She had moved to Bozeman, close enough to visit, but far enough to start fresh. I texted back, "Congratulations," smiling at how much had changed. Craig had taken a plea deal, probation, and restitution payments for his financial crimes. Last I heard, he'd moved to Wyoming, working construction jobs and keeping his head down. That evening I hiked up to the ridge overlooking Missoula. The air was sharp with the scent of pine and coming snow. I found a flat rock and sat down, taking in the valley spread out below, lights beginning to twinkle as dusk settled. I thought about the bitter coffee, the silent battles, the quiet determination it had taken to break free, not just from Craig, but from doubt, from the belief that I should settle for less than I deserved. Sometimes victory doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers in the small moments. A mother reclaiming her life, a son finding his path, a weight lifted from both their shoulders. I took out the old travel mug, the one from that morning, which I'd kept as a reminder. Turning it over in my hands one last time, I left it on the ridge among the stones and walked back down the mountain, lighter with each step.